It's Friday, folks. You know what that means. It's time for another Tech Help Quick Queries video brought to you by AccessLearningZone.com. I am your instructor, Richard Rost. Quick Queries is where I take all the comments and questions and emails and posts and stuff from out the week and put it together in a Quick Queries video. So, yeah, let's see what's in the mailbag. One of my lifetime members, Kim, posted that she's got an old MDB file. Remember those? Access 2003 and earlier, going all the way back to Access 1.0, had an MDB file, Microsoft database file. It's a tiny file, but she's trying to open it in Access 2021 and getting this error message. And the problem is that you just can't anymore. Up until Access 2010, you could open up an MDB file. So in 2007, that's when they made that major change. They added the ribbon and they made a major overhaul to the file format and created the new ACCDB format. And a couple of versions, 2007, 2010, and I think 2013 too, I'm pretty sure, allowed you to import. No, 2013 was the first one that you couldn't import it. Yeah, I should read what I wrote earlier today. But they removed the ability to import from MDB formats. In these middle versions, you could import the objects, convert them over to an ACCDB file. But now, if you've got, Access 2019, 2021, 2024, a 365 subscription, forget it. Now, there are some third-party tools out there and services. I have not used any of them myself. One service that has an excellent reputation, run by Wayne Phillips, who is a Microsoft MVP, is everythingaccess.com. He's got a conversion service. There's other tools like the MDB Viewer Plus. I, again, have not used it. Now, ChatGPT surprisingly told me that it has access to a virtual machine, which is essentially a version of Windows running this older version of Access 2010, and it said that it could try to convert it for her, well, for me. I have not tried this, but it's possible. And another one of my members, Dave, said that he's got some older versions of Access. I used to keep older versions running too. Back when I used to do consulting, I used to get customers that sent me all kinds of old Access versions, and so I used to keep multiple virtual machines. A virtual machine is like a version of Windows that runs inside your Windows. It's like a little tiny copy of Windows that can run an older version of Windows and an older version of Office and an older version of Access. And sometimes you need to use that to convert those files. I stopped doing that a few years ago when I stopped doing consulting. Now I just teach. So thank you, Dave, for offering that. But that's what I would suggest is try ChatGPT, see if it can pull it off. I don't even think I have any old Access files around here to test that myself. Maybe I'll dig into my archive and see if I can find one of my old MDB files. Our Perry9422 says, save it, debug, compile, once in a while, another t-shirt. Yeah, it is. It's over in the merch store. There it is, right there. You get it on, let's see, I got it on a mouse pad, it's on a t-shirt, it's on all kinds of crazy stuff. There it is. Vera Mann says, winning numbers are already available on the internet. It's better to show people how to find the most occurred combinations. Okay. First of all, if you know where the winning numbers are on the internet, drop a link. I'd love to know where that is myself. And as far as the most occurred combinations go, I've talked about this in previous videos. Numbers that are quote-unquote hot or cold don't matter. Logistically, you have exactly the same odds of getting every number as you do every other number. Hot and cold, over long periods of time, it'll all work out to even. So that's just a myth. It's just like flipping a coin. Yeah, there might be short variations where, you might get more heads or more tails, but you keep flipping over millions of flips, it'll work out to 50-50. Although I have seen I did read an article one time that said that they measured coins. They measured like 5 different coins, and a lot of US minted coins like quarters are slightly heavier. We're talking like, fractions of a gram on the head side. So I don't know. But all things being equal, if your coin is evenly weighted, it's not a cheat coin, for example, it's going to be 50-50. Same thing with lottery numbers. Unless someone's rigging the system and you have access to those numbers, In which case, let me know. I'll split it with you. Rest Repo Jorge says, interesting video. I understood it's preferable that the record source of a form be a table, not a query. Is this an exception? Well, that depends. Now, if all things are equal, a table is generally better to make as the record source of your form or report. But if you need calculations, those are better off in a query than putting in the form fields. So let's say you want to do, an extended price, which is, unit price times quantity. Then you got extended price. You're better off putting that in a query and making the query the record source of the form than to do that calculation directly in the form. Okay? If you don't need any calculations and you're not bringing in any other fields from other forms, then yes, it's generally preferable to make the form or report based directly from the table. I skipped one. I put one extra video in there that I wanted to do. I skipped one day with the fitness database, and I got like 10 different complaints. So yeah, it's coming. I just released part 15 today, part 16, or yesterday, I should say. Part 16 will be on Monday. So relax. I might sneak in another different video here or there. It doesn't mean I'm abandoning fitness. I'll let you know when the fitness database is done. We're far from finished with it. Angela says, I'm having trouble with this code. Whenever there's a space involved in the address or the name itself, the program won't send the entire string. For example, 123 space example space street. It will only send 123 example. That's kind of weird. For those of you who aren't familiar with this video, I show you how to take Access and use it to fill in a PDF form. It's a PDF file that has form fields on it. You can use Access to open the PDF file in your browser or whatever your default PDF reader is, and then using SendKeys will send the keys to the PDF file to fill in the form. Now, I've never had a problem with spaces not working. Are you sure they're space characters? Are you sure it's not some other weird character that's in there? Try replacing the spaces with something else like a hyphen. See if that works. This is one of those examples, though, that I'd really have to see to tell you for sure. Maybe try throwing a little pause in there between the characters. See if that fixes it. There's lots. This is one of those things where I'd kind of have to see the database to play with it. But if you were a member on the website, I'd say post some screenshots. But yeah, that's a tough one. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. If anyone else has any ideas, post a comment below. Noel says, is there a video for fixing errors in an already built database? Trying to delete a button that runs a report from a switchboard form. When I delete it, I get an error and I have to cancel the save to be able to use the database. I modified an existing template and I love what I have so far. Too far into it to start from scratch. Well, in order for me to make a video to fix a problem, I have to know what the problem is, right? And I don't have a copy of your database. I don't know what you're working with. I can't see anything from here. So it's really impossible for me to help you. If you're using a switchboard form, then you probably have to go in and figure out what macro or VBA code that button's running. I could teach you how to do this from a new button on a new form, but I can't fix that database without seeing it, and that's not really something I do. So without a lot more information, there's not really a lot I can do for you. As far as fixing errors goes, I've got lots of videos on error handling and troubleshooting and all that kind of stuff. Check my website for more details, and hopefully something on there can help you. But this is one of those cases where, again, I've got to see the database or at least more information to be able to help you. Here's one from a member, Jorgen. He says, if I have a database front end and need to print to a customer printer, but it's not the same on every computer, is there a way to manage that without having to change it on each computer? It cannot be the default printer. This gets pretty tricky because normally Access will print to the default printer unless you specify a specific printer, and it's got to be the same printer with the same name on the same port. So if it's like LPT1 and it's named Lexmark or whatever, then that's what that report is designed for. Jorgen also posted this on the website. He's a member, and we've got some extra stuff in here for you. Donald, thank you, came up with some code from Copilot to print to a specific printer that you can change on the fly. You can loop through Application.Printers to list the available printers for the user. That's kind of tricky. I've done that before. This way you can give the user a form that shows the printers on their system, and then you can have that report go to that printer. It's kind of tricky, though. If you're still having problems after this, then post a follow-up comment and let me know, and maybe it's something that I can put a video together for. Okay? Michael Carter says, I'm getting a runtime error, 3075, syntax error, missing operator, inquiry expression, and food description like, and then quote, it looks like to me you've got spaces in there. You got a double quote, space, asterisk, space. That stuff matters. You can't have those spaces in there. Okay, programming is very specific and no spaces. So get rid of the spaces. Okay, let me know if it works. Out by 50 says the origin story of attachments and multi-valued fields is rooted in access to SharePoint integration because SharePoint allows similar mechanisms as much as making something bad simple for noobs to do. Yeah, I agree. When SharePoint came on the scene, it allows things like this, like attachments right in the database, multi-valued fields. That's basically a combo box staved in a field. And I don't like either one of those things, and I hate the fact that they added it to Access. I get where they were coming from. They wanted newbies to be able to easily, store a Word document in your customer's record, or, be able to easily pick from a list of shipping options. But by allowing users to do that, they're not teaching proper database design, and it makes things even more difficult down the line when you do decide to become a more serious database developer, and now you got to fix all these bad fields you got in your database. So I try not to teach them from the beginning, or at least when I do cover them, I explain to people thoroughly, you shouldn't use these, but if you want to, you can, but no, you're going to have problems with them later on. Some people have no desire to be, proper professional database developers, and they want these shortcuts. And okay, as long as you realize that that's your limitation up front, then great. But yes, exactly. Thanks for sharing. You're absolutely right. Very similar comments to the lookup wizard as well. You're right. I prefer to teach people to, properly have relational tables, and then your combo boxes can work properly and all that stuff too. Value lists have their place as far as lists that you're sure will never change or only will ever exist in one spot. If you got a list of names and that list is never going to change and it's only here, all right, fine, use a value list combo box. But as soon as you discover you want to put that in a second place, it needs to go in a table. Another excellent comment. I had a video where I talk about the end of VBScript, and VBScript allows you to write VB-like scripts or batch files, if you want to call them that, that you can run from the command line. I've got a bunch of them that I use on my system, and they're going to be basically getting rid of it, but making it an optional add-on for a while, and essentially there's some security issues with it, so they're depreciating it. And that's what that video was about. And he's saying that the Windows script host is separate and distinct from VBScript. That's true. Just like the Windows scripting runtime with those two libraries there, file system object and scripting.dictionary. There's also JScript, which is kind of like JavaScript. And those aren't necessarily going away just because VBScript is. And JavaScript can pretty much do everything that VBScript can. It's just got a different syntax. I use JavaScript as well as ASP, which is basically VBScript, on my website. I used to be a C programmer back in the day, so I get the appeal of JavaScript. It's just difficult jumping back and forth between them. JavaScript, VBScript, classic ASP, VBA, VB.NET. They're all similar, but they have subtle differences that trip you up from time to time. So thank you for that great clarification. I appreciate that. And it would be nice if all of the developers in the world got together and just made one language. I know it'll never happen, but like one spoken language for everybody, right? RTAT1 is saying, in last week's quick queries, I said that me dot is necessary for form properties, and this is absolutely not true. RTAT is correct. You do not absolutely need to use the me dot to access the form properties. You can say just caption equals hello there, and the form's caption will change. I should have probably specified that that's how I teach it, because I want students to associate the properties of the form, right? Me means the form itself. So do you need to use it? No, you don't need to. I should have meant that you need to allegorically in my class, right? In my class, we use me for properties. That's kind of what I meant. I've always taught it that way. It helps to keep things separate in the students' minds. But do you need to use it? No. I just think it's good form. That's my preference. But thank you very much for the clarification. Mac Franks says, I think you should have gotten into UNC file name structures for pointing to the backend on a local network. Otherwise, why would you split the database to start with? Because every network that I've built since the 80s, I've always used a map network drive letter, like Z or something like that, to represent the server or the file share. That's just the way I've always done it. UNC paths are fine. I like drive letters. That's just my preference. And for everybody else who doesn't know the difference, a UNC path looks like this, where it's just the name of the machine, like server, and then the folder name where your share is. I prefer to map that to a drive letter on each machine on the network. So both work with Access. Access will actually usually transfer or translate map drive letters over to UNC file name types. So either one works. 6 of one, half dozen of another. And it has nothing to do with splitting the database, which type you use. Splitting the database is its own reward. Giorgio says, at 602, you say it updated it in the background, meaning it updated the first name field, but not the text box, since the text box is now named first name box. Okay, so in the last quick queries, I said if you take a text box that is called first name, and it's bound to a field called first name, and let's say we rename that text box to first name box, all right, just like right here, okay? What's going to happen is if you change first name, it will change the value in the field, but not update the box on the form. So you'll see the record go dirty, but the box doesn't change unless you leave the record and come back to it, and then it updates. Or you issue like a me.refresh or something. Okay? Now, me.firstname and me.bang_firstname are essentially the same thing. Because what Access does is, this is the appropriate way to reference fields, but a form will kind of fake promote that field to a property of the form for convenience, for your convenience. It doesn't always work, especially if you've got a field that's named something that's a reserved word, like a form property, like caption. Okay, if you got a field named caption or picture, it might not work. So you don't always rely on that. You can always rely on the bang to work. Okay? All right, here, so one more time. Let's say you've got a form. Here's first name. We're going to rename the box here to first name box. So it's called first name box, but it's bound to a field called first name. Okay? All right, save that. Now let's take a button here. Whatever. Right click, build event. Okay? And in this button, I'm going to say first name equals whatever, XXX. Okay? Watch this now. If I hit the button, notice the record goes dirty. The first name in the table has changed, but the box hasn't updated. So if I leave the record and come back to it, you can see that it's updated. Okay? If I say first name box equals that and hit the button, it changes it immediately. Now this is why I generally like to represent, have the box named the same thing as the table field, so that they're identical. Doesn't always happen, but it helps. Now, if you do this, if you say me bang first name equals that, and then hit the button, it's essentially the same thing as saying just first name equals whatever. Okay? And it's no different from this, because Access has promoted first name to a property of the form. That's why it looks like all the other properties. Okay, that's like a convenience thing. You hit the button, it still does the same thing. It's still not updating the text box. For that, you need to go to first name box. Okay? All right, so me dot and me bang, as I mentioned earlier, I prefer to use me dot for form properties. All right, and methods and stuff. That's just my preference. That's how I've always done it. It's always worked well for me. If I'm referring to a field, I'll use that. And you don't even need that if it's on the form you're on. You just need just that. Okay? It's a little confusing, I know. That's why I've kind of, That's why I have my thing that I do. That's how I teach it. I try to make it less confusing because it is. There's a lot of weird stuff going on in the background. Moving on, Byte Bash 50 says, thank you so much for this. We had a team member retire, and it's been a little challenging keeping up some of his old ASP legacy sites. These tutorials are a major help. Hey, ASP is still alive and well. I still run my website on classic ASP. I started building it in 2002 when ASP was still, popular. And it's still running great. No complaints. So, are there newer languages and stuff out there? Yeah, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? I got a feeling it's going to be like COBOL programmers for the longest time. We got our software was written in 1968 in COBOL, and we're still running our business on it in 1994. Okay. That's how old I am. Shadow Dragon says, back in the before internet era, I would use the macro recorder and the converter from macro to VBA to get a first cut of Excel VBA code. I sometimes still use this technique when I can't get some Excel VBA code to work. Maybe not the most efficient way to code, but it works for me. Hey, I do it too. I'll be honest with you. I know Access VBA like the back of my hand, but there's a lot of VBA with like Word and Excel that even I sometimes have to look up stuff. And the macro recorder is a great way to learn. I use the macro recorder sometimes in Word, in PowerPoint, in Excel. And of course, Access, the literal red-headed stepchild of the Office family, does not have a macro recorder. But, yeah, don't be embarrassed. I use it all the time. It's hard to remember all the different commands for all these different applications. So it's either the macro recorder or ChatGPT. What's the syntax? So... But I spend about 95% of my time in Access, so you just remember what you do, right? I don't write a lot of Excel VBA code, and Word even less. So just use the macro recorder, see what it's doing, and then you can adjust it to your own needs. I get lots of people posting comments on my YouTube channel and other social media that they need help. I don't offer help unless it's something I can make a video on, but I can direct you to my Access Developer Network, where I've got a list of other consultants that do offer help, including my sponsors here, Shama Consultancy, AccessExperts.com. There's other consultants listed on this page, and if you need help with your Access database, these are the people to talk to, not me. I just make videos. So you got to have a question that's I can help a bunch of people with. I don't work on just people's databases anymore. I used to do that. And I pulled out enough of my hair where I don't do that anymore. But these guys do. You can see Sammy's pulling out his hair too, working on people's databases. And so is Juan. So that's it. I guess helping people with the database. I still have some hair left. So this picture is a few years old, but it's not that far off. So B. Miller, going back to my Word default template video, he says, he or she says, went back to Calibri. And then, Lord, how I've always hated Times New Roman. Hey, don't hate on Times New Roman. Times New Roman was the jam back in the day. I loved Times New Roman in my WordPerfect 6. And I loved it when they had Times New Roman and they introduced Arial. And you could use like Arial for headings without the serifs and then Times New Roman for the text. Those were the days. So don't hate on Times New Roman. LOL. Michael is talking about my multiple cascading combo boxes video. He says, to be more inclusive, I use region instead of state, province, territory, and then municipality instead of city, township. Yeah, you can make this as regional as you want or as generic as you want. I was just using an example of what I know from here in the States, right? We've got state, county, city, and so on. So that's what I use. You can make it however you want to. And you can get really complicated with this stuff too. If you want to make it between, U.S. and Canada, you can have it so that, okay, if they pick U.S. for the country, call it state. If they pick Canada, call it province, and so on. I built some really complicated databases like this, and it's all a matter of how much work you want to put into it. So my goal for this was just to teach you how the cascading combo boxes work. But yeah, again, just more Legos to play with, right? But thanks for the comment. Next up, Xavier says, using DB open table record sets indexed and searching the value using seek is even faster than my faster DLOOKUP function. Yes, you are correct under ideal circumstances. If you are working with local access tables and you're looking up a field that is indexed, Seek can be lightning fast, but it does have limitations. It only works with table type record sets, not SQL or queries. And it only works with indexed fields. And it won't work with SQL server tables. So yes, if you're in the sweet spot if you're using just a local access table with an indexed field. All right. But I prefer doing it the way I did it because, it'll still work with queries. It'll still work with a linked table. So are you correct? Yes, you are absolutely correct in that specific set of instances. So I chose for something that's a little more generic and still faster than the built-in DLOOKUP. So that's where I was going with that. But yeah, if you're running something where every millisecond counts, by all means, your method is definitely the fastest. So excellent. You do know your access record sets, sir. So I give you that. I'm not even going to try that one. Can you delete all the queries if you copy the SQL and use the SQL in the record source of the form object? Yeah, you could. And I do my best to try to avoid using saved queries. They're fantastic tools for beginners, and I will definitely continue teaching them, especially in my beginner and my expert lessons, because they have their place. But I don't like it when my database gets to the point where I've got hundreds of extra queries floating around. So if I can take that query and put it in a form directly in the record source or whatever, I will sometimes, but not always. I mean, this is kind of one of those up to you kind of things. There is no right or wrong answer. So whatever you like doing. Steve posted this. Can someone help with this recurring issue? I have a split database. All users run the front end locally. That's good. Approximately 12 users. The back-end data is on a map drive on a server. For some reason, my users are getting a runtime error 3734. The database has been placed in a state by user ... Right. I've seen this a million times. I thought I set this up properly to avoid this. My users are all running uncompiled versions of the front end, but none have any knowledge to access the design modes. So by uncompiled, I assume you mean they have ACCDB files. That's bad because even though they don't have any knowledge, they can still accidentally get into design mode, and it's possible to make some problems and issues with the database. You're really better off giving them ACCDE files so they can't get into design, because even getting into design can still lock stuff in the back-end tables from improperly messed with front-end objects. I know it sounds weird, but it's also possible that someone has directly opened the backend database in exclusive mode and the lock file got stuck. So if the user's running an uncompiled front end and Access is auto-saving some design change in the background, that could be a problem. Try deleting everyone's LACCDB files, the lock files. Every database file that has tables in it has one. And even your front-end files might have it too. But bottom line, I think you'll save yourself some headache by giving everybody ACCDE files instead. So that's just my experience. And of course, there's always run down the troubleshooter. Do things like, if you have any kind of a file sharing, like a Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive or any of that kind of stuff running, either on the front end or the back end, get rid of that. That'll cause problems. Your antivirus could be causing problems if it's trying to scan the Access database file. So make sure that you exclude any of those folders. There's a lot of different things. Check out my troubleshooter page. I got a million things you can run down. There's a video here too you can watch. Go down all these different things and check for all this stuff. I tried to organize these in the order in which they generally cause problems. So check it out. Finally, tonight we got WattJock. I love that name. Saying, without trying to outshine the master, nonsense. I like when people call me out on stuff or correct me on things or tell me things I didn't. I love learning stuff from you guys. So I don't always act like I know everything. Trust me, I don't. But anyways, he says, what you're referring to as a single quote was initially referred to as an apostrophe or tick mark back in the day when I first learned to type on a manual typewriter in high school circa 1980s. Oh, you're the same age as me. I graduated in 1990, folks. What you're referring to as a double quote was referred to simply as a quote. Thus, you had opening quote and close quote. But an apostrophe or a tick mark is what was used to possessive words such as Rick's YouTube channel or the Dog's Bowl or Rick's Dog's Bowl. Oh yeah, and that's absolutely true. If you learn to type on a manual machine back in the 70s or 80s, you'd hear tick mark for apostrophe and just quote for the double mark. And what I do is when I'm teaching programming or databases or whatever, I try to stick with single quote and double quote to avoid any confusion with apostrophes, because on the keyboard, it's on the same key. It's just you hold the shift key down to get the double quotes. And they have specific meanings when it comes to Microsoft Access, for example. So that's why I stick with single quote and double quote. When you're dealing with grammar, it's a whole bunch of different rules. And you got your smart quotes, which I hate. The left-leaning open quotes and the right-leaning close quotes. And you even got apostrophes lean a certain... There's all kinds of advanced characters for them. And there's, differences in whether or not you're dealing with typing or, grammar rules or programming. So you'll always hear me refer to a single quote or a double quote. And tick mark is something that I haven't heard since the 80s. Oscilloscopes used to refer to them as tick marks. All right, so that's going to do it for Quick Queries 51. Make sure you check out my captain's log where I publish something every day. I try to write something every day. I don't know. It's not always good stuff. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Check out the merch store and get your debug compile once in a while mousepad. And check out my website if you want to learn lots more stuff about Microsoft Access, Excel, Word, all the other things I teach, ASP. But that's going to do it for today, folks. I hope you learned something. Live long and prosper, my friends. I will see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button right now and give me a like. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel, which is completely free. And make sure you click that bell icon and select all to receive notifications whenever I post a new video. Do you need help with your Microsoft Access project? Whether you need a tutor, a consultant, or a developer to build something for you, check out my Access Developer Network. It's a directory I put together personally of Access experts who can help with your project. Visit my website to learn more. Any links or other resources that I mentioned in the video can be found in the description text below the video. Just click on that Show More link right there. YouTube's pretty good about hiding that, but it's there. Just look for it. Now, if you have not yet tried my free Access Level 1 course, check it out now. It covers all the basics of Microsoft Access, including building forms, queries, reports, tables, all that stuff. It's over 4 hours long. You can find it on my website or my YouTube channel. I'll include a link below you can click on. And did I mention it's completely free? And if you like Level 1, Level 2 is just $1. That's it. And it's free for members of my YouTube channel at any level. Speaking of memberships, if you're interested in joining my channel, you get all kinds of awesome perks. Silver members get access to all of my extended cut TechHelp videos, and there's hundreds of them by now. They also get one free beginner class each month, and yes, those are from my full courses. Gold members get the previous perks plus access to download all of the sample databases that I build in my TechHelp videos. Plus, you get access to my code vault, where I keep tons of different functions and all kinds of source code that I use. And gold members get one free expert class every month after completing the beginner series. Platinum members get all of the previous perks, plus they get all of my beginner courses, all of them from every subject. And you get one free advanced or developer class every month after finishing the expert series. And you can become a diamond sponsor and have your name listed on the sponsor page on my website. So that's it. Once again, my name is Richard Rost. Thank you for watching this video brought to you by AccessLearningZone.com. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something today. Live long and prosper, my friends. I'll see you next time.